there. But well, shit. Let's start this. We are
I refuse to start.
but we gotta.
We're not starting. Don't do it. Don't you play that music. Don't you do it.
I want to though.
Don't you dare. If you play that music, I'm leaving you.
Please don't leave me. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. It's the podcast that improves itself, improves ourselves, and improves the self in general. My name is Ty. I'm going to be your host, and tonight I'm joined by my solitary co-host, Distance. We are having a conversation. I think basically the topic tonight is the opposite of last week. Last week we were talking about the idea of dating. Tonight we are talking about the idea of being single. Where I was gonna say, like, where did this come to your mind? But I guess, like, I mean, it is like a natural progression from what we were just talking about last week. So I think it makes sense why this would be a topic of choice.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a weird coincidence. So I was out with my significant other on Friday, and it was it happened to be Valentine's Day. We weren't out because it was Valentine's Day. We were out because it was Friday. And we met somebody at a bar that she's like really into hair. So she asks this like, young woman about her hair in the bar. Next thing you know, they're having a fucking conversation.
Gotcha.
And I got involved in it, and we started talking. And I guess it was just maybe because she'd been drinking or whatever, but she was like just going crazy about how she just really wanted to, date somebody, and that life was a beautiful thing, and that she wanted to share it with someone. And I mean, she was 22. So I mean, when I get like that there's like I don't know, I just think it's a result of a lot of things, that there's many more layers to the issues than just I want to date somebody. It was the longing, the sort of fervent kind of desire for this that I just found like somewhat unhealthy. And I actually told this person, I was just like, hey, you've just inspired me for my next podcast subject. So thanks a lot.
That's fine.
So Selena, if you're listening, this one's for you.
Selena. I like that name, actually.
Yeah, it's cool. Her business card said something different, but whatever.
That's interesting. So anyways, I guess the inspiration then is it's not that it's like negative to want to be in a relationship when you're not, but if there is I feel like we always circle back to the same thing, but if there's a lack of balance there, that's probably an issue.
Yeah, if it's more of like a need than a want, then I think there's a problem there.
Because I do agree with I guess what Selena said, that it is a good thing to like, I shouldn't say good thing. It is something that many people look for to find a person to share life with. I don't think that in itself is like a negative aspiration to have. Do you agree with that? Okay, good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just if that's something that you kind of like want in your life, then that's kind of nice, but I think that sometimes things just get a little crazy, like where people just put too much value on it, and they feel like they need to be validated or given some kind of value by being in a relationship. And then it becomes more of like I sold one of my motorcycles a couple of years ago. And this, the guy that bought it from me said, I want it, I don't need it. Meaning that like, I'll walk away from this deal anytime, essentially. It's just, it's a negotiation tactic. But I think of it the same way with relationships, that, this like, that, you really can leave anytime you want to. And I think that people just forget about that. Most people don't. But realistically, you can anytime you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can.
But people should be okay with that.
Yeah, there are definitely situations, like especially like a marriage where you have kids. Like there are situations where you probably, like, I don't know if it's like just free to say like, oh, we can whenever you want, but I do agree that it is more at will than most people think. I feel like a lot of people feel trapped in relationships where they probably should have been gone a long time ago. And I don't really understand what's keeping them there, other than maybe just maybe for lack of a better word, like tradition. We tend to just keep doing things because we're doing them. And
habit.
Habit. Yeah, I think habit's much
Or
better than tradition. Yeah.
routine, comfort. I mean, the
Mhm.
thing is that you'll hear a lot of people essentially rationalize staying in bad marriages. Like they'll say all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
And it's like one of those things where, yeah, okay, kids, that's an important thing you need to consider in marriages. And I think that the thing is like there's a certain amount of crap that's going to happen if you're like in a relationship. Like not
Yeah.
everybody's perfect. People are going to not get along all the time.
Mhm.
I mean, it's normal. But there's a certain point that things get to where it's just like taking away from your contentment and existence, and you just need to go at that point.
Yeah, there's
And
a big difference
it's
between just like the normal disagreements or arguments and like actual
Yeah.
toxic behavior.
right, yeah. And I'm at the point now where I've decided like I won't live with anybody like that I'm dating ever again. Like if I happen to marry someone, yeah, I'll move in with them then. But I will not live with somebody that I'm dating. I just won't do it. Because that's just another needlessly complicated thing.
But do you not feel that if you were going towards marriage, you would want to know what it was like to live with that person first?
I mean, it's not that difficult to know what it's like to live with somebody without actually living with them.
I guess if you're like staying over enough, it's kind of
if they stay over at your place, like I mean, I mean my current lady friend, I mean she pretty much lives here like every weekend more or less.
you
So,
just mean like officially like signing a lease together and that kind of stuff.
I'm not gonna actually have like an apartment with them and all of our stuff is in the same place, because that takes away from the will to leave thing.
Yeah, but like doing that thing where I think a lot of couples do this, where like whichever one is like constantly going over to the other person's house, all of a sudden they have a drawer there that's cleared out for them. Like it's that, like you're not officially living there, but it's like, okay, I stay here enough that we're gonna do this. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and like worst case scenario, everything goes completely to hell. You can fit all of your belongings in a small bag.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, kind of like ready to tear the Band-Aid off at any time. Yeah.
Very like anticlimactic. Okay, well I'm gonna go empty out my drawer then. Like, okay.
Well, yeah. So I guess like, so there is, when you're single, it can be very unhealthy to have too much desire to be in a relationship. Do you think that the opposite is true? That there can be like an unhealthy desire to just be single?
I mean, I guess it depends, and actually that brings me to a question that I had too. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to address another question before we answer that one.
Oh, sure, yeah, go ahead. My bad.
So, on the subject of unhealthy, I feel like this relates to it. Would you say that people that are single are just more selfish as like a nature of that, of being single?
Well, I don't know if I could say that like the people are more selfish by nature of that, but I would say that it very well could be a selfish choice that someone made.
Yeah, because that's the thing is I think that if it's something that is the result of or causes some sort of negative negative traits, or it's a result of negative traits, then it can be a bad thing. That it can be unhealthy. I mean, and some people are just like, there's people that want to have a relationship and someone to sort of spend their time with and someone to confide in and all that, but they're terrified of committing, and in that way I think that could be unhealthy. But that's not because they have a desire to stay out of relationships, so that they're afraid of trusting someone.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
I was listening to actually I stumbled upon a Christian pastor. He was having a conversation with another guy. The guy's name is Stephen Furtick. He actually preaches at a church in Charlotte.
Okay.
And regardless of any opinions I have on anything else that he said, he was talking to, and actually I feel like I need to find this so I can tell you who it was, because it just came to my mind. I didn't even write anything down about this. But one of the things that was said while these two guys were talking was that when you're in a relationship, a romantic relationship with somebody, whenever you sort of open up to them, so to speak, you end up with you end up with giving somebody power. So it's
Yeah.
Donald Miller and Stephen Furtick.
Like
And in
the
conversation,
vulnerability of being open like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like basically saying like, okay, here's a knife. And if you prefer, there's a firearm right there. And the battle axe is sitting on the coffee table. It's kind of like, I'm giving you the power to hurt me now. And there's something that the guy mentions. It's actually the other dude in the interview, Donald Miller. Well, it's not really an interview. It's just it's a conversation, basically like what we're doing. He says that, his wife, that, she could, wound him to the point like where he wouldn't recover for years. Like she could say something so awful to him, and it's kind of scary. But the longer you're with somebody and they have those ways that they could really severely hurt you and they don't, the more that kind of like builds trust.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is really scary. I mean, it took me a long time to be okay with that kind of like opening up. I mean, I'll be honest in saying that there was a period of time where I was like unhealthy single, and then I became healthy single. And then I feel like it became like a healthy, like in a relationship thing too. So like, I mean, as well as you're aware, but other people may not be. I lived with somebody for about 3 years and actually moved out and then moved back in. I essentially allowed myself to be manipulated again, mainly out of a fear of being alone, I think, really. I was essentially being used. I mean, what it comes down to is someone that honestly, in all seriousness, I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that individual is a sociopath. And I mean that and like seriously. After that, I had a lot of difficulties, a lot of issues. So I sort of like took on this kind of like, Senor Slutty Pants kind of persona for a little while.
Is that what you meant by like the unhealthy single?
Yeah. I was at the point where I didn't want to let anybody close at all. So I just kind of like kept everybody at a pretty far off distance. And that to me would be kind of an unhealthy form of it, because it's like, yeah, I kind of wanted to be like in a relationship maybe, but I also was too scared to let anybody close. But then at the same time, I don't think healthy enough as an individual that I really needed to be in a relationship anyway. And there's a lot of things I needed to kind of figure out, and a few other people that I dated casually in between, where I had to learn some lessons about, how best to do this whole being in a relationship thing. But it's weird because I kind of feel like you can't, you have to be in a relationship and then out of it and then back in another one and then out of that one and then back in another for you to be able to learn, because you can see things that were wrong from the outside looking in, other people could see after a relationship ends, but then you can't test out whether or not you've really figured that stuff out until you're in another one.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
so it's like you have to feel like you're ready, that you've made some changes in yourself, just yourself, by yourself. Because that's the thing people don't realize, like anxiety issues will fuck up a relationship.
Yes.
Depression that's not dealt with in some way will fuck up a relationship.
Well, yeah, that's that whole thing like that people say about it's like learning to love yourself first before you can get into a relationship, which I'm not sure like how much that I believe in that being a hard rule, but it is true that like if you are if you're at a point where you're not really okay with being yourself and who you are, if you get into a relationship, a lot of times you're putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on the other person. You're making them become something to make you feel whole, and that's not fair to them and not fair to you. It's really bad for both people in that situation, I would say.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, for sure, because we push like if you have control issues, like you'll push your need for control onto another person, and you'll be at the point where like you just have your hooks in them all the time, so to speak, and you always want to know what they're doing, and many other things. I think that I talked about that we did an anxiety episode, I think.
Yes.
I think I talked about that in that episode where I was talking about someone that I dated that I would text them and freak out if they didn't respond. And
yeah,
I do
remember
and that's
that.
like and that's like pushing that need for control on another person. So I think a lot of it is that if you have to recognize those things, those difficulties or those faults on your own, and then fix those things to make yourself happier or more content. I don't know about happy, but more content person, a healthier person. And then those can be beneficial in a relationship. But the number one thing is for those things to be beneficial, like for you. That's the thing that matters the most. So it's like, I think Tony Robbins said something about there's nothing selfish about working on yourself, because if you want to be any kind of value to anyone else, you need to work on yourself first.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. I've never heard him say that, but I like that.
I actually don't like the loving yourself idea. I think that it's not.
No self-love?
I mean, it's not clear enough to me. Like, there's a difference between loving yourself and valuing yourself.
True. Yeah,
and
true.
I think that if you love yourself, you might feel the need to coddle yourself a little bit and make yourself too comfy. Or you might feel like treating yourself a little more than actually, like, working on things and pushing yourself to be better in any number of ways.
I don't know. You could probably tough love yourself, but I get where you're coming from though. That, like, the context or like the at least the baggage that's brought along with that word. It does sound more like passive or
just I don't know. Just honestly, it's too squishy.
Yeah, it's squishy. I like that. That's a good adjective.
I don't like how squishy it is. It's just very it's like a stuffed animal instead of a shovel. You can dig a hole with a shovel, but what's a stuffed animal do? You can take snow off your driveway with a shovel, but what's a stuffed animal do? It's just comfy and serves no purpose.
Well, the thing too with love is it's very often like unconditional. Whereas like value, like you were saying, if you lose value, you lose value. Love can be something that it's like, oh, it doesn't matter that I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I still love myself. Versus if you're doing things wrong, you're not going to be valuing yourself. You can still love yourself, but there's not going to be value.
Yeah, I mean, after you spend enough nights getting trash sleeping with people you don't know, you have to recognize that maybe you should value yourself a bit more instead of loving yourself. And that's like, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, like, you want to sleep with people, whatever, that's what you do. But at a certain point, like, as long as you maintain a certain level of self-respect and some sort of sensibility about it, then that's fine. But like, one thing that I find bothersome is, like, there have been a few occasions in which, have you ever noticed there's people that they'll go out and they'll get kind of drunk and they're very miserable, so they essentially inflict their misery on everyone around them. Like their inhibitions are gone, so they just start like being nasty to people.
Like the angry or the mean drunks,
and they'll just do that with complete strangers. And like, I've had a few occasions in which
the sad drunks can do the same thing. It's like, it's in a different way, but they can definitely like kind of inflict their mood on strangers too. Just
they can bitch enough to bring other people down, but like, it's not necessarily like trying to come at people. But being as like outgoing as I am, I end up starting like weird conversations with people at bars, and there've actually been a few times where it's always females, it's always women that when they're attempting to demean me, one of the first things they'll ask is, "Do you have a girlfriend?"
When they're trying to demean you?
Yeah. And then they're like, "Oh, well, no wonder. Of course you don't." Like, because
like if you say no, it's like a okay.
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, well, you obviously are undesirable, and people desiring to date you is the only thing that gives you any kind of value. So I'm going to use this to demean you chiefly above anything else."
Well, there is. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like, I'm playing somewhat of devil's advocate, like trying to like defend that, but I do think there is something to be said about the like whenever like a woman shows interest in you, or I guess like it doesn't even have to be a woman, like a significant other, whenever you're in a relationship, you seem more attractive to others because someone's vouching for your value in a relationship, if that makes, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, I do at least understand that it's like, it's like, oh, well, okay, so on the flip side of that, if someone seems more valuable or it seems more like valued when they're in a relationship, then I could, but that's still just bullshit. That person was just being an asshole.
I mean, the reason why somebody wants to be in a relationship with me is because I have value. And the reason why I'm eligible to be in a relationship with them is because I'm not taken, or, unless it's like an open relationship or whatever. But we're talking like, just no polyamory here in this case. But
gotcha. Yeah.
You have to have some kind of value for someone to want to date you. And I mean, that's
maybe for most people. There's someone out there for everyone, but
that's true. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about someone that's got absolutely nothing going for them, who's like deeply emotionally wounded and done nothing to help themselves with it, and they find somebody else, then just two people that probably shouldn't be in relationships that are somehow settling for something unhealthy and not so great.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was gonna say is that I do feel like it's not like, I'm not trying to like blame technology and say it's like evil, but like the fact that we have the internet and the ability to reach out and meet so many more people than has been possible in human history, I think it allows many unhealthy relationships to happen where you can like you were just pointing out, if you're someone that is incredibly broken, rather than working on yourself, you can find that person that is looking for that relationship and be in that, rather than actually like building yourself and like looking for a healthy relationship. You can find the person that wants to find the broken person and be in like it. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's definitely not. But I mean,
well, no, I just mean that like, yeah, that's obviously not good being in that relationship. I just mean the number of choices we have. I don't even know if that's a good necessarily a good thing.
You could broaden that and just say that a lot more relationships happen because of social media. Some of them could be bad, some of them could be good.
Yes.
I'm kind of thinking about the whole technology thing because I mean the thing is that I think that it's much easier for a manipulative person to manipulate you if they can meet you in person. Of course, you have to sort of lure somebody in, like, and you can do that with a like a dating website or even Facebook for that matter. Like, hey, person on Facebook that's friends with my friend, what you doing? What you doing this weekend? And I think that the thing that I said about the whole want it, don't need it thing, that's more geared toward when you first meet somebody. Because there are several times where I've gone on like maybe 2-3 dates with somebody, or even like 4 dates, and been like, no. Or I've been dating somebody, called them my significant other, and then recognized there was sort of a deal breaker type thing there, and been like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I'll walk away anytime that I need to, because it's important for me to find something that's someone that's compatible with me, and to find something that's healthy for me.
Yeah.
And it's just like leaving, because see, that's another thing. I think we talked about this on the dating episode too, that when you make it a goal to be in a relationship, that puts the relationship goal over the person that you're in the relationship with.
Yeah, you're not looking for the right relationship. You're just looking for any relationship.
Yeah. And like the fear of, being alone is a big thing. Like the whole fallacy of like the one, it's like, well, I can't leave her. What if she's the one? Like, oh God.
Well, what if it is Keanu Reeves?
Well, his name is Neo.
Thank you. But so I do want to circle back to like what you just talked about, the fear of being alone. Do you think that is a big motivator for a lot of people?
Fuck yeah.
So like, do you think that we need to be a little more, we need to get a little more comfortable with like being alone and being single? Like, because I've had a lot of friends that are like serial daters. They will get out of a long-term relationship, talk about how, like, I'm not pointing at you, but just like how Lee said in chat, I'll hear the same exact thing from a friend. Like, I've reflected on it recently. I want to take some more time to build on myself. I will hear that. And then a week later, they're in a relationship with someone else. And then like the same thing will happen. And it's like, I've had multiple friends like now, Lee, I haven't known you long enough to know if you're like that at all. I'm not pointing the finger at you, but I've had other friends that have been like that. And it always like it makes me wonder if it's is it just like an insecurity thing? Is there like a fear that comes with being alone that you don't feel as valuable and you need someone else there to make you feel that you're worth something?
Yeah, I think. Well, see, it gets kind of complicated because this is also kind of a survival instinct.
That is very true. Yeah.
That it's the reason why, like, my cat prefers to sleep in a room with me, or like why your dog prefers to be in the same room, because
Are you
your
dating your
rate of
cat?
survival. What? No, I mean, it's like, so on the subject of survival instincts, because your survivability rate increases when there's two mammals in the room to hear a threat,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
or like, you know, three or four if, you know, if they're in the same room as several people or two people. And you know, it's like that that the way that, like, that it makes sense. Like, actually, I read this really weird article about about uh like ape-like relatives, and
I have a
that
few of those.
human well, I mean, evolutionary relatives, but that more like chimp-like primates,
Mhm.
that chimps have, male chimps have, like, uh, for instance, in the article, they said that it was a researcher holding a chimpanzee's brain next to a chimpanzee's testicle.
Hmm.
And they were almost the same size, and not because chimpanzees have small brains. They're actually quite large.
They just have
And
really
that,
big balls. Jeez.
yeah, like and there's an increased amount of testosterone, and there's
Mhm.
an increased likelihood of promiscuity and things like that. And I don't know if there's any research to back this up, but there was some speculation that males that are in monogamous relationships tend to have a lower level of testosterone,
Hmm.
which tends to make them less promiscuous. And
Hmm.
I understand there's a lot of people that have probably read, like, you know, the female brain, and people that have read like Testosterone Rex and like other books that might like disagree with the effects of hormones on people, but, you know, whatever. Disagree if you'd like, in comments below, let us know. But because that's good, disagreeing is good.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but there's a lot of speculation that there's a lot of changes among us as primates that make us more suited for monogamous relationships. And if you look at like imaging, you can see that the chemical type stuff that's happening, like in the brain, neurotransmitters, and I think even the what's it called, perfusion, where they like test how much which parts of the brain have the most oxygen, I think.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
That in imaging you can see, and that the chemical effects of our attachment on our romantic partner is actually very, very similar to the chemical effects of our attachment to our parents, particularly our mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Freud might have had something there. Maybe. I
He
don't
was
know.
onto something after all.
Yeah, daddy issues are real for all of us.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that the chief, it's oxytocin, I think, is the chief.
Is it primarily mother in males or people that are attracted to females, or is it always the mother, no matter the person's sexual preference? From that study.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, oxytocin. I'd have to look it up again, but oxytocin is something that's like you typically release when you give someone a hug. So I
Oh,
mean,
sure. Yeah, I guess you would have it from either. Yeah.
yeah, anytime you feel attached or like validated by one of your parents, like the feeling that you're getting is probably due to the release of oxytocin.
Mhm.
But I was gonna like tip tap on my keyboard and try to look it up, but it's gonna take me too long to find the. Well, I should probably just fucking give myself links to this shit so I can look it up when we're talking.
This was supposed to be one of the episodes that wasn't going to take research. Too.
Yeah, I know. But I looked at a couple things just because I was like, I couldn't help myself. Because I was kind of curious, like, is this, because fear is a survival instinct for sure. Anger is a survival instinct. Most of our emotions are just that. And when we think of something as being a feeling, because like someone at work today, I mentioned something about love being a survival instinct, and she was like, "Have you ever been in love?" I was like, "Dude, I've had my heart broken more than probably anybody you know." So don't ask me that crap. Like when you say stuff like that makes sense, people somehow think you have no feelings. Like what's wrong with you? But then I was
That's
like,
true.
define in love, and she essentially it's like, you feel real good whenever you see that person, like kind of a rush, and you can't wait to see them, and you hate it when they're gone. I'm like, so you mean infatuation?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yes, everybody feels that way. And that's why I try to define love personally as being a more meaningful attachment than just like a bunch of, hormones raging inside me.
Yeah.
That's like, let's do it all the time.
Well, yeah, because
Don't
we
go
talked about
away.
that.
We could do it.
Yeah, we talked about that last week about it being like almost like a biological trick.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is there any similarity to that with the desire to be in a relationship, and that like we were just talking about the the increased survival factor that comes with being like in a pair? Then is that something that we just learned from history, and that like now we're kind of in a point where maybe society has evolved past where relationships actually make sense, but we still do them because of that habit?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is true, because one thing I say, it's kind of like circular or maybe backwards, but I've said it on numerous occasions that we're just a bunch of animals pretending to be humans.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of stuff. Was it Stephen Hawking? Stephen Hawking would be a weird guy to say it, but someone at some point who was super smart said something about like, if we have a lot of things left in our genetic code that will probably destroy us. There's a lot of things like in our genes that are not really good for the way that we exist now. But I mean, like the rate of survival, yeah, I think it goes up when there's two people. Like the fact that there's a period of time where, a woman's going to be pretty incapable of a lot of things, like while they're pregnant, and like human babies are just these little blobs of like, calcium and organic matter. I mean, that just take craps and cry all the time. We're one of the most helpless animals when we come out.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it really makes sense for there to be someone else around to help out if you don't live in a community. But it's like, I think that there's some degree of there has probably been some degree of reward historically for pairing up.
Yeah.
So to some degree it's instinctive, but like what you said is that we've gotten to the point in our communities that have sort of evolved over time that it's not 100% necessary to pair up. But I think it's a hell of a lot easier to raise children with help.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
yeah,
regardless. So
without a doubt.
I think I think it's better to, what was it? I forget the name of the show, but it was a sitcom like in like 2000 or maybe like in the late 90s, where it was a guy had just like, slept with somebody the night before, and a female colleague at the office the next day makes a joke about, did you wrap it up? No. I was like, oh, better be careful. You might end up with a kid. So he looks at the female coworker and says, you probably got some kids running around out there that you don't know about. And I was just kind of like,
what show was that?
I can't remember. It was, it might've been Just Shoot Me, or maybe even like news radio. Like I can't remember. Yeah, it was one of those older shows.
Yeah,
but it was like, it's like, well, clearly you missed that day in health class. Because that's the thing, is that there's one party that's going to end up paying for that. That's going to end up being responsible, and there's another party that can just leave whenever.
Yes.
And of course, that's the reason why we've created like legal protections and things like that to, either prevent that from happening or discourage it, or to give some kind of recourse or some benefit to the individual who's being left, who in most cases is going, I mean, the one that has to squeeze the little fucker out, like, has to carry it around. I mean, that's like more than likely the person that's going to end up being responsible. I mean, there's no, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, that does make sense. I mean, there has been a historic, I don't want to call it a need, but like you pointed out, survival of the fittest almost always wins out. And if you are more likely to survive being in a pair like that in many points of human history, it completely makes sense why that's going to be something that's passed forward, and why that's I don't know if I consider that a trait though. Is that like when we talk about like genes, like, do you think that there's like a monogamy gene that some people have then and some don't, or that it's just a learned
some
behavior.
some people seem more disposed to it than others.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Some people seem a lot more resistant to it than others, and I think that there's a little bit of both. It depends your experiences with the whole idea of it, the whole idea of pairing up, the whole idea of monogamy and such. But then also at the same time, I think that there's some personality traits to it a bit too, because to me. Because I could tell you that just to give an example, like there's something in me that like I don't think was created by interacting or exposure, that I'm just really rebellious. Not like in a way that's like destructive, but if a rule is stupid, then I'll like probably say something about it. And like I'm very irreverent about like labels and titles. Like I don't care about those things at all. And it's funny because part of that was almost suppressed in me as a child, but there was a lot of it that was really like always there. Like there was always this raging against whatever authority there was.
Gotcha.
And that's one example of a trait that I think is very very like almost innate in me, because it's always been there. And the same thing with being sort of outgoing, because there's certain periods of time where I was somewhat shy, but it wasn't because I wasn't an outgoing person. It was because I had poor boundaries and was afraid of people's opinions. And then the day that I kind of stopped. So that's always kind of been there.
So it was almost like going against your nature.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, that would be a good way to put it. So that's just to give an example, just like a really anecdotal kind of argument or example of, something that I've experienced personally. So, and that's the thing is like, there's a lot of like a good friend of mine. She doesn't have kids. How old is she? She is 35, maybe 36 now. And all the time, all these like old ladies at work, like, oh, you'll change your mind. You're going to change your mind one day.
Yeah.
You'll change your mind. It's like, bitch, I'm almost 40.
Yeah.
Like if I was going to change my mind, I would have changed it a little. And that's the thing is like, I just don't think she really wants kids. And maybe that's something built in. Maybe that's something that she's learned.
Is she also single or?
No, she's married.
She's married. Okay. Just married, just doesn't want kids. Okay.
She's been married for almost a decade now. God damn, we're old.
So there's, so that is, like you're saying, like a respectable choice. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Not necessarily, no. In fact, probably now it's probably a good thing.
Well, yeah, I would argue for that too. I would agree with that. Is there, but a lot of times we do look at it as wrong when someone is like single that late in life and not married. Do you think that there's anything like, I guess if the choice is healthy, it's okay, right?
Yeah. Well, if somebody has a strong desire to be single and they've got reasons for doing that, then that's cool and that's their decision and that's something that they'd like to do. If they don't feel a desire, a want, not a need, a want for having sort of a partner in life, then that's fine. I mean, that I even find myself jumping to that conclusion, like, well, they must really suck. It's like, no, it's possible that maybe they just didn't really want that. Now, because for me, it's the same thing with like, for instance, like if somebody's like kind of out of shape and they don't have a problem with it, that's fine. But if someone constantly complains about being out of shape and does nothing about it, then I kind of have a problem with that.
Yeah, because
it's like really like, if you have a problem, then act, like whatever it is that you want to do, or whatever. Someone that says that I have a unimpressive wardrobe, like okay, well then go out and figure out what fits you and make some effort. Or like I suck at doing my taxes, like okay, well do something about it, like learn,
the problems with the uneasiness that person feels with the inability to do said thing, right? Like it's not. Yeah.
But if someone doesn't have a problem with being single and they are, then okay, cool. But if that's something that you truly don't want, and it's something that you still are, like you're still single, that there's only really, I mean, it is entirely possible that perhaps you're not desirable to somebody else to be like a partner with them, maybe, or perhaps you haven't put any effort into being anything else.
Yeah.
Or you just decided and that's what you want. And that's fine. Because for me, it's all about like, what's valuable to that person. Like,
yeah,
like the times where you and I, like a lot of the time when you ask my opinion on stuff, when you and I are talking, I try to figure out like your perspective on that and what
Yeah.
you're looking for. Because as long as it aligns with that, and that the thing that you desire is healthy and not like detrimental, then do what you do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But the thing that I find interesting, the biggest indicator to me about this like intense like desire to not just be not single but also to be married and have the title of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
There's an entire community in the United States that fought really, really hard to be able to have that title.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we went so crazy trying to be allowed to have that and considering it to be a right as an American citizen, that it seems to me to shed a lot of light on the values involved in it. And I mean, one of the justices that I mentioned to you earlier, Anthony Kennedy, he's actually retired now. He had some things to say regarding the decision that they made in was Obergefell versus Hodges, I think is the name.
Okay.
But it was actually a consolidation of 6 different cases in lower courts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it was just given the name of one of the cases. And all 6 of the federal district court rulings found the same-sex couples and other claimants that what was happening wasn't constitutional. I think it was like ministers and such, like not giving out like marriage licenses or refusing to. There might have been people in certain in government organizations not giving out marriage licenses and some like clergy refusing to do ceremonies and such.
Well, that even like there was that famous case of that clerk that did that, right? Was there a woman that didn't that become like a national news thing? Yeah.
Hell yeah. And so it's interesting some of the stuff that Justice Kennedy had to say, because I think he might have been one of the more like verbose, or at least one of the more like interesting speakers, because it seems that he gets quoted a lot.
Okay.
But one of the things he said, and actually I originally heard this in a TED talk, the one quote, and then I got curious. It was Bella De Paulo. Bella De Paulo is I think 63, and she has been single her entire life.
Oh wow.
And she does like a TED talk on like why she is and like what's good about it, what's not.
I'm gonna have to watch that. That's interesting.
It's really cool. Yeah. One of the things that Justice Kennedy said during the course of this ruling, marriage responds to the universal fear that a lonely person might call out only to find no one there.
Dude, that's good. I like that.
So then this is like, there's like kind of a paragraph that I don't know. I think this is Justice Kennedy. Yeah, here we go. So this is like one of the paragraphs in the ruling, I guess. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, 2 people become something greater than once they were. As some of the petitioners in these cases demonstrate, marriage embodies a love that may endure even past death. It would misunderstand these men and women to say they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it, respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness. You hear that? To be condemned to live in loneliness.
Yeah.
Excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right. Actually, as a kind of like, it's weird because like I get a little choked up because I think as an American, like it makes me like really happy to see somebody like standing for the Constitution like that.
Well, he's a very good speaker too, just like the way what he does with words. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So then the next thing, the judgment of the Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit is reversed. It is so ordered. So I mean that's what he said. So that was that. Like, okay, these other courts were being unconstitutional AF. So that's that. But the language used in here makes it seem like if you don't get married, you are doomed.
Well, yeah, it is
condemned.
Yeah,
to live in
condemned is a
loneliness.
strong
condemned
word
is what
to
they
use.
call it when you're on death row.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, I don't know if you saw the title I chose for this episode and where that my mind went with that, but like the title solitary confinement, I thought like, it just goes to being single, but there is something very interesting about the experience of being human and how social we really are and how necessary that is for us, that it's like solitary confinement is the worst penalty you can do to someone, basically, besides killing them. It is apparently incredibly psychologically damaging for people to spend long periods of time in solitary confinement. We need other people to a certain extent. Not to say that, like, okay, being single is dangerous, but being completely alone is definitely dangerous.
Agreed. Yeah. Like, it's, having people present and continuing to be a social creature while maintaining some degree of boundaries between yourself and those other people, like a healthy kind of boundary. Because at some point you're always there's some things that will happen where, like, you really can't have boundaries. Like, sometimes people will say things that hurt you and you can't necessarily separate them from you when their opinion causes damage because they're significant to you. But it's like, you know what I mean?
That happens. Yeah.
And one of the guys that I work with today, we were talking about social interaction, humans being social creatures, and that he was saying that being in, like, a monogamous relationship, like living together or being married, can actually be a really good interaction for introverts, because then you have the ability to interact regularly one-on-one with one person that you're comfortable with. And then if at some point, you want to go do your own thing, if you have a healthy relationship, then you'll be able to do that. Or even if one person's an introvert, the other's an extrovert, it's like, okay, I'm going to go in my room and read. Like, all right, I'm going to go out and hang out with such and such, and what's his name?
Yeah.
Like, okay, have fun, and then that's that. So it was interesting when he said that, is that you can fulfill that need for social interaction if you're an introvert without being completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even introverts require that. It's just that they become somewhat exhausted by too much of it or too many people.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to, like, sort of gauge that and not be overwhelmed.
I think that's I like that. I've never really thought of it that way, but I've experienced that in relationships without being really conscious of that fact. That's interesting. Yeah. Who was it that was talking about that?
Dan. He was actually the guest when we were kind of wishy-washy about our mission. He's the one that talked to us about galactic colonization.
Oh, cool. Yeah. He works as an engineer, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Chemical engineer.
Yeah, he was a cool dude. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, would you agree that it's probably better? Because I think this is something that we've kind of, like, talked about and kind of gotten to, but not really, like, expressed it concisely. Would you say that it's better to be single than to be with the wrong person?
That is a quote that I found when doing research for this episode, and yes, I
serious?
would. Yeah, that was like one of the top quotes for, like, just about being single. Is, like, I forget who said it, but yeah, it's a famous quote. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, though. I don't think that there's anything wrong with being single in and of itself, again, for the right reasons, if it's healthy. So I don't think that it's like, of course, yeah, I think it's necessarily better than being with the wrong person.
That kind of reminds me of sort of the joke that it's better to have lost a lover than to have loved a loser.
That's fun. I've never heard that before. Actually,
on
like
someone's like notebook in middle school, and I was like, that's hilarious, and I remember that ever since because I thought it was funny. But it's, I guess that it's all about, like, I think that maybe the biggest point that we could kind of, like, go home, like, try to drive home, go home with, run home with, take to the bank. Here's what you can take to the bank out of this one. I am really bad at idioms right now.
I'd like to drive home with.
Yeah.
Here's the one we're going to take home at the end of the night.
Yeah. One idea you can take home from the bar.
Yeah.
That, I think that being single shouldn't be thought of as some kind of curse. And if you shouldn't think of it as being condemned or lonely. You should think of it more as, like, being in a holding pattern, looking for one of the many individuals who could possibly be a healthy match for you, and to always being discerning when you do venture down the path of dating about who it is that you're looking at and talking to, and not putting too much value on wanting to be with somebody.
Yeah.
And then also recognizing that there isn't something wrong with being in a relationship or in a marriage, that those people have different ideas and different benefits and also different detriments to being in that situation.
Mm-hmm. That is like we never really brought up a distinction before. There's kind of two different types of being single. There's kind of voluntary and involuntary, right?
Yeah, but I mean the involuntary one, a lot of the time when people are being, I don't think there's any such thing.
Well, someone like just got broken up with, they didn't didn't choose to be single. They're just like, I mean, they literally found themselves single because their significant other said they're done. But
I mean, I would call that like a different.
Well, yeah, because that's like a transitional period, right? That's not like
and at some point, like you'll get to sort of a stable point where you're single, and because the thing is there is no willing or unwilling, because if you are unable to find a compatible match, someone that works well with you, then you really should be single and not going after individuals that valuing the idea of being in a relationship over finding someone that's worthwhile. Better to be single than with the wrong person.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with that. And it is, I mean, like we talked about earlier, it is very important to take time to, it's such like a cliche thing to say, but it's like taking time to work on yourself is the best thing that you can do. And I guess the biggest thing is getting rid of that, that stereotype that comes with being single, that means you're somehow unwanted, or that there's some sort of there's like a leprosy attached to it. There's like, oh, they're single, that means stay away. Like it can be a choice, and it can be a healthy thing. It doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing.
Agreed. 100% agreed. I think, yeah, that's a good resolution, I think.
Do you did you find a quote for this week?
Yeah, no fucking clue who said it.
Okay.
It's from I think the Life Hacks website.
Okay.
I can't remember. There are some places in life where you can only go alone. Embrace the beauty of your solo journey.
We have reached the end of another episode of the Metacast podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the conversation, please hit the like button, subscribe to keep up to date with what we're doing, and comment below and tell us your experience of being single. If you are interested in further taking part in the conversation or even joining us as a guest on a future episode, please join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. And don't forget, we will be live again next week, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great week.